Why is it that some parents are so surprised in how their children end up growing up, the choices that they make, and they'll spend a lot of time questioning the child? Why are you doing this? Um, Criticizing them, even bashing them to other people as a parent. Going and talking to other people about your child. I understand that as parents, you may have someone that you can talk to or you may want to vent to, but a lot of time that's not what it is. It's a smear campaign. You have parents that goes around telling false narratives about their children, and they feel that they have a right to do that because they are parents. And people are automatically going to believe them because of that position of honor that God has given to them. Some people will say, why does God allow some people to have children and they do these horrible things? Well, because the parent did not have to do that. They had the ability to make other choices, but they chose to do things a different way. But getting back to what I was talking about parents who are going around, they're smearing their child's name and they're telling people things, and then that child often will be cornered. There's going to be people that's going to be saying, you're a bad child. How could you do this? How could you do that? Because of the natural and the absolute default authority and respect and trust and belief a parent is going to be given. That is what parenting is. That's the position that a parent holds. And so the parent will be surprised. Why are you being this way? Why are you being that way? But most parents have had 16 to 18 years of that child being under their hand. And however you treated that child and however you raised that child, however you raised them, you've had 16 years from the time that they were born, give or take, accounting for times that you may have been absent from their lives. There could have been situations like that. The child went to live with the grandparents or stayed with relatives and the mom was gone, or some parents went to jail, went to prison, or whatever the case is. But for the most part, there's 16 to 18 years that child is exposed to that parent. And whatever situation they put them in, whether they're raising them right, whether they're abusing them, whether they're calling them names, whether they have different people in and out of the house, whether they've left them with other people to stay and spend the night, whether they will leave them here and there, leave them alone so they can go out and do what they want to do, or they didn't feel like raising them. Whatever the scenario, those children have been exposed to that and subject to that, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual, verbal abuse from that parent and whoever else they had around them. Because remember, I said a parent, when we make mistakes or sins in our lives, it does not just affect us. If a person chooses to be a drug addict, their choices is going to affect their children. If a person chooses to have someone come in and live in their home that's of questionable character, it's going to affect the children. If someone brings someone in their home who's volatile and violent, it affects their children, their household, and even the neighbors next door because they hear all the turmoil. There are people that's being affected. So, as parents, there have to be not a prideful mindset of, oh, I raised you, oh, I gave you this. I'm going to give a newsflash to every parent. All right, because I'm one myself, and this is something that God has taught me. Anything that you have provided for your children, God made it possible for you to do it. So stop putting that in your child's face. Stop saying, I did this and I did that for you. No, God provided you what you needed to provide for your children, but your job is to not only discipline your children and bring them up, by admonishment, but loving them and nurturing your children. That food, that bread, whatever you give to your children, you did not go and plant that tree and plant that seed. And even if you did, it was God that commanded that seed to germinate and grow and bear fruit. He provides. He gives you the means, gives us the means as parents to be able to provide for our children, to send them to school. He created that environment because there are places where there's no school. There are places where you would not be able to thrive and get a job. So God strategically places people in different parts of the world and in life. But the attitude of, I gave you this and I gave you that. And so that's the mindset many parents will have. And they feel like they don't have to ever apologize to their children, and they were justified in what they did. It is not enough that you gave them something to eat because someone else could have done that. It's not enough that you provided a bed for them because, you know what, it may have been hard, but at the very least they could have been sleeping outside. So there was always going to be a place that they can live. But the biggest role as a parent is raising your child and treating them the way you would want to be treated. And not saying you don't have it as badly as I do, hurting and abusing the children, and then saying you're lucky. What I got is not what you got. But I will say a burn is a burn is a burn is a burn. Whether it's a 3rd degree burn, and there's even 4th degree burns out there, or a 1st degree burn or superficial burn, a burn is a burn, which means pain is pain. And I guarantee you, parents, that whatever abuse your parents gave you, that you tell your kids that they're lucky that they didn't get, your parents that abused you and treated you that way feels like you're lucky because they got it worse. 16 to 18 years is a very, very long time in a child's life. So if you fail them as a parent, if you abuse them, if you mistreated them, then don't be surprised when they are a certain way when they get older, when they have certain behaviors, because that's a long time for that child to be under your hand and in your care. It's a lot of time for those seeds of hurt and resentment and assaults and vulnerability and fear. So you expect your child to be maybe loving and wanting to be close to you, and you're wondering why they're being a certain way to other people and why they're being problematic at school and what's going on in their lives and why they're choosing partners that's a lot like how you were. You would treat your daughter poorly, and then you're wondering why she's making bad choices in her relationships. Well, what kind of father were you? What kind of mother were you? Where did she or he grow up? If you were a horrible mother to your son and now he wants nothing to do with you and he can't commit to anyone, why is there surprise here? That child has had 16 to 18 years in a household with you. And that's the truth. Because a lot of times what happens, parents want to be able to brag about their children later on, or their children get older. Okay, now it's time for you to take care of me. But you never took care of them. Some parents are horrible to their kids. They're horrible to their children. And they go, well, I'm your mom and I'm your dad. That is not enough. That is not enough. It really isn't. Because there are other people out there that can be mom and could be dad, and better moms and better dads. And sometimes your children are now finding their way and meeting people who is helping them, who are helping them, and being better people to them. The Bible says that it speaks about, I can't remember the scripture, about how strangers from afar will come and be your help. And sometimes that's what God is doing. He's sending strangers from afar to encourage your child, to encourage your grown son, your grown daughter now, because you have ruined them. And yet, a position of honor is expected. And I have a video, guys. It's called Maternal Cannibalism. If you have never seen that before, look for it. It would really bless you to understand that sometimes if you have a parent or a mother who's mistreated you or treated you a certain way, and it can also go for a father, it shows you how you can honor the position but not yield to that unclean and wicked behavior within them. But you'll have to watch that video to understand, because this is not to give anyone the okay to go and abuse their parents, curse their parents, do evil to their parents, go on a smear campaign of their parents. There's some of you have a testimony that you have to come out and you have to share it. But it's really important that you're not dishonoring them. They may have dishonored their position through their behavior, but as a child, don't dishonor them. Don't allow people to talk about your parent and dog them out and disrespect them. Don't hit your parents. Don't curse your parent. Just don't do that. Sometimes in your life, you have to just deal with them just with caution. Other times, they're so bad that you have to just remove yourself from them altogether. Sometimes with you, God may tell you to pull yourself away from everyone altogether that you never intended to be pulled away from. But God sees the heart of people, including your parents. And God will move your children away from you to protect them from you. Because sometimes as parents, you can be very provoking and hurting to your children. And they can't focus because they truly love you, or you just know how to push their buttons as a parent. And God will take your children from you. God will protect them. The Lord promises to protect, to bring people to the secret place, to bring them to a place that no one can get to them. That includes parents. Because God sees beyond the facade of being a mom or a dad. He sees your heart. He sees the vindictiveness. He sees the vindictiveness of parents toward their children. How they'll do wicked and evil things to their kids. How they'll play their children against one another. And there's usually one child that can see very clearly what that parent is, and the other children cannot see it because that parent will treat them differently. So that child will always feel like they're by themselves. So the children really can't come together and say, oh, I do see this, and can find comfort in one another. There's going to be one child that's going to be pampered all the time. There's going to be one child that's going to be the spy that tells on everybody. And then that one child that's treated as the black sheep. And play the kids against one another. And imagine your child would have had 16 to 18 years of this. Why are parents surprised when their children don't turn out the way that they expected to, or they don't have the affections that they should have for their parent? Being a parent can be hard, and you can make mistakes coming up and doing things that you should not do. Sometimes you can even spoil your child too much, because sometimes if you spoil them too much, they can get to a place of just having zero accountability, and it can backfire on you. So there is a balance that we have to be careful of as parents, because you may want to give your child a whole different world and show them love, which means there's a lack of discipline, and that's bad as well. And so you end up raising a child that is narcissistic to the rest of the world, mistreats people, never can see where they're wrong, don't feel like they have to work to get anything, because as parents, we pamper them too much, right? And then there's the other flip side of neglect and abuse. So we need God to help us to keep that middle road and keep that balance, to know, hey, if you're going too far to one side or the other. 16 years is a long time. And your child is not going to just suddenly turn around and just be what you expect them to be when you've had 16 years from the time that they were born. From the moment they were born, that child, your baby, our children comes out pure. They have an attachment, a bond to you, a pure love. It's called a filial love. That filial love can only be stained by something that the parents does or don't do, or someone they expose them to, and it changes it. There is a moment in that child's life where that love and that trust, that they have to believe every word you say, to believe that you are going to come and pick them up, to believe that you do love them, to hug you anyway, to put their tiny little hands on you and pat you no matter what you do. It's going to change. And so that compounded with years and years and years of doing certain things, years and years of making them be the parent while you keep having kids and all these different things, and always being blamed for everything, treating your children differently, disappointing them, choosing other people over them, ridicule, laughing at them, laughing at their body, laughing at what's developed, telling them they're greedy. What do you think? What do these parents think is going to happen? And so then they want a child, oh, you should care for me and love me. But how do they do that when they did not get that growing up with you? You did not care for them that way. You did not protect them. These parents would not have shielded their children. If they choose someone over you, why are you surprised? You chose other people over them. If they can shut you out and not deal with you anymore, why are you surprised? If you raise them that way, you shut them out when you're upset with them. I'm not by any means condoning, bad behavior or anything like that, or saying parents should be mistreated. But what you sow, you're going to reap, even as a parent. And too often parents are being unfair. 18 years is a long time, whether you were present or not. And so you can't expect to produce a perfect product in the end when you have used, abused, and bruised them. And what God does in the process is, if that person allows him to, is to show them what has happened in their lives and to heal them and to restore them. And hopefully they can make amends with their family and they can move forward with their family. But unfortunately, sometimes that parent is still crooked. They haven't learned. You have to think of the amount of time that parent had to behave the way that they have. They were adults or at some age of accountability when they had their children. Their children weren't born, so they were already behaving that way before the child was born. And then they continue to behave that way. And now the child grows up and they want to now plant seeds of that same toxic and caustic behavior into their children's children. And that child has a right to shut the door if they need to. So that you, as a parent who still is not learning, who is misbehaving towards your Heavenly Father, they have to protect their seed, because you will not stop and you will not change. There are so many parents who believe that God is foolish, that God will not see. He does see. And the end product of what that child has become, whether they are indifferent, whether they are volatile and rebellious, whether they go out there and get into gangs and all these things, in the midst of all that hardened shell, God sees clearly through that child their beginnings. He's not condoning their behavior, but while we may see how they've become and what they're doing, He sees those seeds that you planted or these parents planted in their children. And yes, ultimately it's going to be up to that child if they're going to allow the Lord to take the thorn out of their hearts. But He does not forget what you have done or what these parents have done. He sees every bit of that child. He still sees them as a newborn, as a toddler, as a little small child, a teenager. He sees everything. He sees everything. He sees everything that's made them what others may see on the outside in the behavior. That person that's shooting up drugs in their veins, he sees their beginnings. And again, yes, they're going to be held accountable for their actions. But as parents, why are some parents surprised when their children either rebel or they don't become what they thought they would be? And then truly there are children who are following all the rules, but they're absolutely miserable inside. God removes that child sometimes because he sees that you're going to continue that same behavior. You're trying to do the same thing through the grandchildren. And so now you want to get the affection of the grandchildren by drawing them close to you, getting them in your corner, while you continue to counter your child in their decisions with their children, because you're trying to win them over. And this is another way of hurting the child, of hurting your child. There are parents who are out there that are constantly doing things to their children. They've had 18 years to destroy them, and then they continue to do certain things. If that child opens up their doors to you, even though they may feel like they shouldn't trust you, they want them to do the right thing as a child. They want to have the family bond, and you'll be right there under their roof causing trouble between their friends. There are parents that's causing trouble with their children at their job. They're calling up their jobs. They're doing these things. They're destroying their children. They're destroying their relationships. And so there comes a point where God is going to totally take you out of the picture, because he's going to give that child the peace that they need, so that you are not able, or these parents are not able, to continue the toxic behavior and carry through to the next generation, because there are parents that does that. Their whole goal now is to be loved by the grandchildren and use the grandchildren against their child. Their whole goal is to play the victim. And because they're shrouded in age, it's easy to hide that manipulating heart. But God sees that. There are many children that God has become their parent. And he's using and he's bringing people in their life that can encourage them. They're getting their encouragement from someone that they've never met across the globe. And they're getting encouragement from him. And he's raising them. And he's healing their wounds, and he's binding their wounds. And he's not going to allow these kinds of parents to get to come through the barriers and through his hedge to destroy them. Because truly there's some parents that, if not for God pulling them away, that child would end up either killing their parent because they were to that point, or hurting themselves or killing themselves because their parent is that persistent and wicked and keeps them surrounded and boxed in by people. Imagine the parent is doing something wrong and the child has no voice. Nobody's listening. They're adults, and now the parent is calling people and having people reaching out to them, and the people don't know. All they're thinking is this is your mom, this is your dad. And so forcing the child to go and reach the parent that continues to behave a certain way and play games with them, and there are people just going, that's your mom, that's your dad, not knowing the wickedness and evil that's there. I want you to understand that God is not just seeing that you're mom and your dad. He sees the wicked and evil things that you do to your child. He knows everything you have done. He knows everything that you have plotted. He knows everything you do behind the child's back, and he protects them. Oh, I don't understand why they're not calling me. Look in the mirror. I don't understand why they don't want to have a close relationship with me. Look in the mirror. I don't understand why they don't feel this way about me. Look in the mirror. Because sometimes that's the answer. You have to face yourself and see where you went wrong and ask the Lord to forgive you. You must be in a place to apologize to your children and mean it, and not keep saying sorry just to get your own way and hurt them again. Oh, I can't believe that she told her mom she had to move out of her house. You don't know the hell that her mom was doing in her home. Oh, there's nothing possible that a father could do. Yes, there is. Just because you have a great dad doesn't mean everybody else does. Just because we have great parents doesn't mean everybody else is going to have a great parent. Just because they have great parents doesn't necessarily mean everybody else will have great parents. They're parents who are abusing their positions of authority. They're parents who have been doing wicked things for 16 to 18 years of their child's life. And that is a long time. It is not only 18 years, but it is the formative years. It's the year that the child was most vulnerable in their lives, most trusting. And it will change. Parents can destroy that. So it's time to take accountability and to be accountable for your actions. And if you already asked the Lord to forgive you for your sins and for wrongdoing, it's time for you to also apologize to your children and listen to them and not argue with them about what had happened. And sometimes, little by little, the relationship will be restored, but you must be willing to let them open up to you on their terms, and meaning not in a disrespectful way. Okay, they shouldn't be playing games with you and disrespecting you. You shouldn't be allowing your child to curse you out. That's not okay. Okay? Or treating you like a doorstep. You have to give them money. You have to do whatever they want you to do. No, that's not what I'm saying. You're still a parent. You're still worthy of respect. But what I'm saying is you have to allow them time to heal and to come around. And you have to also accept that maybe they may never come around. And if they never come around, then perhaps just you taking that step, you would have opened the door for a better future for your lineage, their lineage down the line. I'm going to end the video here by just saying, don't be surprised by how the child turns out, because they've been under your hand for 18 years. Whether good or bad, but especially if it's bad, don't expect that you're going to bring up a saint and they're going to be different with you. At this point, they'll just have to be in God's hands. And very often than not, God is going to pick that child up and turn them around. But of course, it boils down to whether they're going to yield to his call, or if they're also going to blame God and say, God, why did you do this to me? Because that is often what happens. Why'd you let me be born into this family? Why'd you let my mom do this? Why'd you let my dad do this? So you know what? Forget you, God. And I will say to you, the child who experienced that, don't charge God foolishly. How fair was it for Jesus to be born to be crucified? He could have turned around and said, God, I'm not doing this. How could you bring me down here? Have me being I could have been born into a richer home. You had me here. And these people are pushing me and spitting on me and making fun of me and calling me names and lying on me. You made me be born so I can be crucified. But no, there was purpose. So understand your purpose. Again, guys, you can check out my playlist. I have quite a few things. I have things about toxic parents, toxic friends, toxic leadership. There's a little bit of everything there. So just check it out and see. And I pray that you will find healing. And to those parents, reach a place of being humble and looking in the mirror.